Hello and welcome to The Switch. This is the series where we speak to inspirational people, each of them wildly successful in their own fields, about big turning points in their lives. I'm Gee Foottit and I'm lucky enough to quiz these people about the precise mix of skills, behaviours, traits, drive and sheer grit that has got them to the top of their game. In particular, I'm interested in that pivotal point in their life, the light bulb moment that propelled them to a new level. I want to drill down into that moment and find out what it was that convinced these remarkable people that they had what it takes and that it was the right decision. We've called this episode The Mountain, as we discuss overcoming adversity, finding the right path and the triumphs that define us. Our guest will talk about her unique and inspiring journey, the challenges she has faced and the lessons she has learnt along the way. But importantly, The Switch is also about you, the listener. Are you confident with your life or content with your career? Are you considering of making a switch of your own? Maybe you're looking for a new direction or the motivation to take that crucial step. Whatever your situation, I hope you can take inspiration from this show. And as the series continues to grow, we'd love to take your questions for our future guests. To introduce myself, I work at St James's Place, the UK's largest provider of face-to-face financial advice. And I work within the Academy, which has trained over 1,000 people to become financial advisors from all walks of life and different backgrounds, and people that decided to make a career switch of their own. To inspire others to do the same, we're talking to extraordinary leaders across entertainment, sport, psychology, and in this special episode, someone whose life and journey has inspired many people across the world. Today, I'm joined by Gail Muller. Gail is a speaker, educator and author with a background in journalism, media and outdoor adventuring. Told as a teenager she'd likely be in a wheelchair by age 40 due to musculoskeletal issues, Gail lived with chronic pain for much of her life. This has taken a massive toll on her physical and mental health. However, in 2019 she decided to act and began working with specialists in Italy to rehabilitate her body. The success of this treatment gave her control of her life again and allowed her to live the dreams of adventure she thought she had lost forever. In 2021, Gail published her memoir, Unlost, which follows her time living on the Appalachian Trail and explores her journey through trauma and pain, overcoming the odds and finding joy living wildly and bravely. In 2023, Gail published her book, Do Hope, Why You Should Never Give Up, which tells a story of survival and realising that hopes is more than just a platitude, but in fact a powerful and energising catalyst for changing your life. Her adventures have helped her to live with and triumph over the limitations of her chronic illness, and by exploring the world through the lens of hope, she has taught others how to push their limits and achieve their dreams. Gail is currently balancing her life between education, outdoor adventure and sharing her skills with others so that they can live with the same confidence when facing adversity. Gail, welcome and thank you so much for taking time to join us on The Switch.
Oh, you're welcome, Gee. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and thank you for having me on.
So I gave a really brief overview of your published works and your love for adventuring and also struggles with chronic pain. But there's always more to the story. So do you want to start by telling us a bit more about the pain that you suffered in your early years?
So I'm from Cornwall. I'm Cornish born and bred and I'm coming to you from Falmouth. It's glorious. So being Cornish, I'm lucky enough to have been surrounded by the great outdoors all of my growing up life. And in my early years, I wasn't in lots of pain. I was outside enjoying being on the water, hiking, sailing, sea swimming, paddleboarding, learning to surf, all that stuff. And actually, I thought that was how I would continue until a rather dire prognosis from a one-off specialist in London said that likely I'd be in a wheelchair by 40 because of the structure of my feet and how I walked, which I largely ignored because it didn't seem to be followed up by anything particular, and I felt very well at the time and I was very young. And it wasn't until my early 20s that I really started to feel the beginning of that chronic pain, which initially I didn't know was chronic. Obviously, you just think you might have a bad back or, you've pulled something, or I did a lot of competitive rowing, so I thought I might have injured myself. But yes, the pain itself, when it manifested, was through the right-hand side of my body, but radiating out from my sacroiliac joint, the right-hand side, kind of above your glute, that piriformis muscle there too, and it was impinging nerves, but mostly it felt like I couldn't really move my body with comfort and ease, and a long-term, ongoing, deep pain that gnawed away at me for a very, very long time. We're talking maybe 12 to 15 years. So yeah, it impacted every area of my life over time. But in the very beginning, like with most things that grow, it's innocuous and you think it's just going to be something that will go away at its own time. You soon realise it doesn't.
Wow. And yeah, do you want to just give us a definition of chronic pain?
Well, for me, it took me a long time to understand chronic because I think that you always think that there's a solution to everything if you look hard enough and try hard enough. And not often there is actually a solution. It might not excuse me, it just might not be the one that you think it's going to be. So chronic is for pain that doesn't go away. Chronic is pain that doesn't get relief easily, that doesn't resolve itself. I think medically it's something that doesn't resolve itself within 2 or 3 months. I think maybe 90 days is then seen as a chronic condition. But then it doesn't stop after 90 days either. It can continue indefinitely and have quite debilitating effects on things that we take for granted when we're well. Our social lives, our relationships, our abilities to drive, to shop, to be a functional member of society. And bit by bit with a chronic illness, those things are chipped away at until you're left with very little. And it's a very lonely place to be.
Wow. It sounds terrifying, to be honest, to me. So when you look back now at how far you've come, being told at a young age about how you would be limited by pain, how do you reflect on that advice and what would you tell your younger self if you had the chance?
Well, I think probably I didn't understand exactly what that prognosis was. I was maybe 13 years old. I can't quite recall exactly the age I was, between 13 and 14. So at the time, I looked to my own doctor or my parents, and because it was a one-off session that a member of the family had kindly funded for us, it was not part of the normal, NHS doctors system. So I didn't tell my mum exactly what had been said in the room because I didn't want to bother her. And also I didn't want her in the room because I was a, testy teen who didn't want my mum in there with me. And I figured this sounds terrible, but if it is terrible, someone will take care of it and tell me what I need to do next. And I think paperwork got lost in the post. It didn't make it to the surgery from the private clinic in London. And no one ever said anything about it again with any gravitas. So I was assured it must have been fine. So I didn't at that age consider that I had a problem to worry about, only very, very far in the back of my mind. I suppose to my younger self, I wouldn't change anything because I think if I'd have known how bad it would become, if I'd have taken that prognosis very seriously and worried about it daily, it would have taken away years that were good and healthy and where I was robust and had good movement and was pain-free. But I think probably my early 20s, Gail, I would like to talk to her about feeling less unsure. Unsure about how to be firm with doctors, unsure about advocating for myself, especially as a young woman, and that it's not always in our best interests to be so bloody polite. So I have a lovely family, lovely friends. I'm thankfully, I believe, really nicely brought up with great values and morals, and I'm very kind. And so I found it, when I look back at how much I was allowed to be shunted to the side by the system, it's crazy. Not one individual, not one doctor or one particular hospital, but my slightly apologetic requests for help and sorry I'm wasting your time and probably it's nothing and okay, I'll just go away again. For years, I didn't need to do that. I would have told myself to advocate more strongly and to not be told for so long it's just a bad back. It's just this, it's just that. Go away, take some paracetamol, give it time, because I lost a lot of years to that.
I think that's such good advice, Gal, and something that I could have done with myself. So I'll give you one example of where I've done something similar.
Please.
I had preeclampsia when I was pregnant, and I just thought I needed to go and get some fresh beetroot juice and I'll be fine. And it just goes to show, I think women particularly do not necessarily like to, like you say, cause any trouble or whatever it might be. So I think that's the best advice. If you have something, shout about it, get the attention that you need.
Yes, and I think that we get really confused because we associate, a lot of women anyway, associate that self-advocacy and directness as being unladylike, which is such an old-fashioned term, or, unattractive or bossy or harsh or brassy. And actually, that's not fair. We're just doing what anybody else would be able to do in those circumstances, which is to stand up for ourselves. And you can do that in a polite, measured, well-informed and clear manner. And we shouldn't be afraid of that.
Absolutely. Now, I think everybody listening will understand physical pain to some extent. They'll have experienced some, one thing or another, but chronic pain in particular has an effect that goes beyond the physical. Can you talk a little bit more about the mental side of having chronic pain?
Yes, that's a great question. And then there are numerous threads to that. So firstly, when your body is suffering, because it's symbiotic, you are one holistic system. And I don't mean only holistic medicine. I mean that we operate as a whole. What affects the mind affects the body and vice versa. So if your body is inflamed and it's in pain and it's sending out different cells, white blood cells, to deal with that pain in the painful area, you're going to have inflammation globally in your body, which is going to affect mood, hormones, chemicals in your system. I'm not a specialist, but I've had to learn bits and bobs as I've gone along. So there's that aspect, the actual chemical and hormonal flux that being in great inflammation and pain can cause. But also, and perhaps more insidious, is this feeling of hope that you carry on with. And I mean, that references my current book, Do Hope. So hope is a huge part of my life. But when you are hopeful and you export that hope into other people's power, so a doctor, a specialist, a chiropractor, a massage therapist, a physiotherapist, then you're giving away your autonomy and your control over your own well-being. So I think that it's really difficult to have positive mental health when you feel like the control over your well-being belongs to other people. So when you give it away and you don't get any better, what are you left with? Because you have no control anymore because you believed other people were solving it. And then if it doesn't work, you're absolutely on the sidelines and forgotten about. Whereas if you retain some of that control yourself, have good conversations about your health, do things in your own life to help your health, whether it's how you sleep, who you see, how much sunlight you get, what you put in your body, how you eat, keeping a diary of how you feel, then you have that autonomy back. But way back then, I didn't have that. So I was trying so hard, doing all the right things, asking all the right questions, being patient, waiting for the letter in the mail, waiting for the next appointment, even though I knew 3 months I was going to feel exactly the same. And that sent my mental health downhill, because at the end of that, I was left with nothing, worse pain, no answers, no remedy apart from a bag full of medication. And the pain clinic who told me eventually, you need to give up hope of getting better because your hope is holding you back. So that was very damaging to my mental health. The idea that no matter how hard I tried and how positive I stayed, it still wasn't getting any better and nobody else was coming to help.
Wow. So talk us through that moment of your life and what that really did to you or for you.
The moment where the let go of hope moment in the hospital.
Yeah, you were advised not to hope.
I know. It's dreadful. It really is dreadful. But with hindsight and with kindness, I can see what that specialist was trying to communicate to me. So there's an exasperation also, I'm sure, for people who work in a pain clinic or any kind of medical environment where they are dealing with chronic conditions. Because if you work in acute medicine, I'm sure that there's some, you're going to lose patients and that's going to be dreadful. But there's going to be wins where you manage to intervene and to save people's lives and you see them improve, heal, the body heals and off they go. But with chronic, as a medical professional, I imagine that you're frustrated for the patient, with the patient, that they can't get relief and you can't find the right thing for them. However, there is no excuse for using the phrase, you need to stop hoping that things will get better. I think there was a frustration around the fact that there were some medications that I didn't want to take because they were making me slur, not able to drive, which meant I'd have to stop teaching, which was my passion. It gave me purpose, and we all need purpose in order to feel good and to thrive no matter what's going on. So when he said give up hope, I was shocked and stunned in that moment. And the connection he made was that you have to give up hope so that you can accept. So the more you think, there'll be a better day, this will go away, I will get better, there'll be a solution, there'll be a cure somewhere. The more you focus on that, the less you're accepting, this is what my body can do, I need to work with my body, I need to listen to it where it is right now. But he didn't say that. That's what he was aiming for, I'm sure, if I'm being really nice about it.
Yeah.
But it sounded like, stop, you're never going to get better. So he said, you just apply for your badge for your car, consider giving up your job, stop driving completely if that helps. and take the pills even if they make you depressed, slurry, etc., because they'll take away the pain, and the pain is what you're coming to me for. So I was disappointed, and it was at that moment, probably after many, 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 many years of dancing delicately and gently around the medical system and thinking it's probably my fault, I'm probably not trying hard enough or asking the right questions, or I'm probably not good enough to be saved, or I'm not in pain enough yet to make it to the top of the list for anyone to really concentrate on me. I realised in that moment, no, there isn't an answer. It's not that there's a really great answer they've got and that I'm not sick enough yet after 7 or 8 years, or that I'm not a good enough member of society to warrant attention and focus from a specialist. It's not working. The system is broken for this kind of condition. And for me, so I decided in that moment to let go, like a relationship, a romantic relationship where you're like, oh, I need to try harder, I need to do more, I need to offer more, I need to do more nice things. There's suddenly a day, hopefully, for all of us where we go, well, heck, it's nothing to do with me after all. I've done way more than I should have done. I'm going to go off by myself now. And that's what I did. Said, thank you, take those pills, give me the codeine, because I need that to survive. But all the other things, the nerve blockers, the this, the that, no thanks. And then I went off alone into the wilderness, if you like, to find other modalities and other ways to ease my pain. Because I thought I was well. And if no one can figure out what's wrong with me, then there's probably a chance that I can get well again and figure out some other way what it is, reverse it, and then be well again. So I'm going to go and try and find out.
I love that. I love that attitude. And after hearing such negative news, you did sort of take it on yourself to say, there's another way and I'm not going to give up hope. But we'll come back to that. So during this time in your life, you had learned to cope and lived with the chronic pain, and you'd had a career and you'd done lots of different types of roles. You've got a diverse background of interests and skills. Would you class yourself during that period as a generalist, or were you always felt drawn to a particular specialism?
Through all those years where I was in pain and before, it's always been about people, intervening with people, supporting people, listening to people, galvanizing and inspiring people to move forward and to see themselves for how bloody glorious they are. So whether that's been, and it is now, with wider audiences, bigger speaking audiences, corporates, working with them with workshops, that kind of stuff, change management, navigating adversity. Initially, it was about young people. So I had been a teacher. I was fast-tracked by the government programme into leadership of teaching. This was after I worked in kind of broadcasting and journalism and film in London for a bit in my early 20s to mid-20s. It was when I did my PGCE in my fast-track programme with the government that I fell in love with teaching. My mum's an amazing teacher. That's where I found that kind of inspiration. And for me, the ability to be in front of rooms of teenagers up to the age of 18, in a tricky school at the time, from a tricky demographic with lots of endemic poverty and generational unemployment in the old mining communities, to let those young people speak their minds, listen to what they felt, help them see their talents, their skills, their potential, and watch them turn themselves around with just a bit of scaffold and support and guidance, and then fly and find their inner worth and confidence. That helped to alleviate my own pain, because, helping others succeed is one of the greatest things. It feels like success yourself in some way, the glory of the view of watching other people fly. And I'm just good at it. I don't know, it's taken a long time to say that because it feels arrogant in some way, but it's my skill, my innate talent and passion is helping any adult, human, child, whatever, see their talents and go forward, renewed, lifted, and to the next level up. And so that has always been my passion. But my career was the teaching. And I was a head of faculty in humanities, theology, and I taught English and history. And my degree is archaeology and classics. My postgrad is history and citizenship education. And my master's is broadcast journalism. So it's a real mix, communication, humanities, lots of how humans interact to better themselves and their societies. So it was in the middle of quite chronic, terrible pain that I decided to go for this. The government was looking for excellence in British teaching to second to Europe. And I was selected as a representative of British teaching of excellence to the European Commission, where I was sent to Italy in one of the European Commission centre schools that work with the science and research centres for the European Commission. There I was with this most prestigious role, selected from my country by the DFVS at the time, and the Department for Work and Pensions, where I had my interview. It was all very fancy, whilst I was struggling so much that I thought, shall I walk in front of this bus because I'm in so much pain, or shall I cross the road and go into the interview? It was real knife edge stuff. But yes, that education took me to Italy, which is where I met the dentists at Lake Como who were able to diagnose what was wrong with me and change my life. So the serendipity of following your passion, following your heart, and the yellow brick road that's in front of you that's really yours, not the one everyone else tells you should be taking, takes you where you need to be. And for me, it saved my life.
So at the beginning, you mentioned the chronic pain was caused by musculoskeletal feet, and now you're saying it's dentistry. And I guess that was something new, was it?
Well, who knows what it really was? It's wild. It's like, oh, we'll inject you in your spine. Oh, no, it's because your feet turn in. Oh, no, it's because of X, Y, Z. So if you have, anyone who has a chronic condition or knows somebody who struggles with an invisible illness who's listening to this will know and understand the frustration of either no answers or a myriad of maybes. It could be this, could be that, we're not sure. It could be this, let's try this, let's try this. Great, it's great to try loads of things. But when you get spat out of the end of that machine of trying and you've heard maybe 70 different things from not just medical specialists, but more woo-woo people or, which I don't disagree with, like, great, try anything when you're in pain. I fasted in the Thai jungle for 12 days in a row twice. Transcendental meditation, shamanic breath work, everything you can imagine. So who knows what it really was? But what I do know is that when I finally, at my lowest ebb, made it to the dentist's chair in Lake Como, the chiropractor and dentist who worked together, that first appointment, I was ready to end my life because I didn't want to be a burden anymore to all the people who loved me and was so worried about my pain levels. And I just couldn't live with that level of pain, which nobody could help me with. And it was, they put my head in a scanner machine and looked at my jaw and looked at how my teeth met and said, oh, I can see you must be in agony. That's horrendous. You must be in agony all down the right-hand side of your body. It must feel awful. And I again burst into tears and felt seen, and this was a brand new suggestion, and part of me thought, oh great, another thing it could be, this is endless, and another part of me thought, this is so different and so out there. My teeth, how are my teeth causing my, that I can't really walk properly or use my right arm, and that I'm in so much agony and it goes up and down, and I'm some days better, some days worse, it's untrackable. And I thought, well, you know what? It's either I'm out of here permanently or I give this one last go. And because I am who I am, I guess I just got that nature that's like, yeah, I hope this is going to be the one. It's always, I hope this will be the one. Let's give it a crack. And it bloody was. Saved my life.
That's unbelievable.
I know.
So we've called this episode The Mountain. Aside from referencing your love of the outdoors, which we will come to, we felt that this captured the feeling that a lot of people experience, that overcoming adversity feels like an uphill battle. Throughout your own life, how have you found the right path forward?
I think the right path forward is always available to you, but often it's very obscured by the noise of life, by advertising, media, what everybody else wants you to do, who people think you are, who you think people think you are. All of that is noise, understandable noise that we're all hearing all the time. Your path is already in you. And when I say your path, I'm not trying to be metaphorical in a huge degree. It's like, what brings you pleasure, what makes you feel aligned, what brings together all of your compasses. Whether it's morally right, ethically right, whether it gives you pleasure and joy, it stimulates your senses, it helps you use your innate talents. When all of those compass points are pretty much facing in the right direction, that's where you should go. And you know that. It's when everything moves with a bit of ease. It's when you can get into flow state. It's when you haven't got 100 obstacles hitting you in the face because you just think you want to do this thing. I should be a lawyer. I want to be a lawyer. Why do you really want to be a lawyer? And, and the study feels hard going and you can't find a position and you can't find anyone to mentor you. All of those things are probably because it's not really what's meant for you, what really brings you pleasure. So for me, sometimes that moral and ethical thing will come into view. So, Gail, because I do a lot of international tutoring, I get flown all over the place with high net worth families who are struggling with their children, or their children are struggling educationally in a wide perspective, not just with a subject, but just globally, in terms of their self-esteem and their self-worth. And I still go and do jobs like that occasionally so that then I can fund my treks or do pro bono work or do free education and stuff with people in my area. But sometimes I get offered jobs with people who I probably don't agree with some of the things some things going on in the background that I think. So part of me goes, but it's a short period of time and that will really help me pay for X, Y, Z that I want. And I think, but is that my path to go there, to do that? Does that feel right to me, really? No, and the times that I have gone and done those, it has not been a good experience for me at all. And I haven't been able to bring most of my great talent to that child. I don't know if that's a great example, but the path will show up when you're brave enough to lean into what brings you the most pleasure and what feels right. And sometimes it's scary because you think, I don't know if I can do it. But the only thing to do is try. And there's that famous quote, leap. I think it's Joseph Gardner. I can't remember. Leap and the net will appear. Leap and the net will appear. So, yeah, it looks like you're going to fall off the side of the mountain. But my goodness, there will be a trampoline ready to bounce you right back up again into the next step. Listen to yourself. Listen to your heart.
Brilliant. And if you haven't ever taken that leap before, sometimes the learning from the leap is like you just described. It's not the right path, but at least you know not to take that path again. So I think if you learn something, whether it be good or bad, taking the leap is never a bad thing.
No, I agree with you completely. Taking the leap, as long as you're safe and sound, is never a bad thing. And every single disappointment, obstacle, what you might perceive as humiliation or embarrassment at the time, that's a lesson. That's a gift given to you. It's just a beautiful sign saying, hey, well done. Not this way, though. That way over there. It's just being guided gently all the way through to your right path. But people freeze often at that first signpost of, no, not this way. And they think that means, and they shrivel in front of it and think, this means I'm a terrible person and I'm useless and pathetic and it's no good and I give up. Actually, don't be afraid. Be really proud of yourself. It takes courage to get things wrong. It takes courage to try and fail. Failure is where all of the learning and the joy begins.
I love that. So, Gail, as you know, this podcast is called The Switch, and we speak to people about those poignant moments in their lives or those light bulb moments. So we really want to delve into what that was like for you. So where do you feel on your journey that you made the biggest switch, and what was your core motivation?
There are a number of times, obviously, that we all switch and feel like things change a lot in our lives, especially for me with my ADHD, that I can be quite impetuous and I can suddenly decide to shift things up on a whim because I have a gut feeling that something might really work out. Often they do, this innate sense that I have that my body and brain are reading things that I'm not actually cognitively aware of yet. But probably it was the switch from teaching, which had been my profession for so long, and I was so invested in, and in lots of different ways. There's ego involved in that. It's not just I'm an altruistic, wonderful person, which, am I? Yeah, I am. But it's the ego of being needed by people, of making a difference or thinking you're making a difference, having people want your advice and your expertise. Education is great at providing everybody with something when it's going well. It's a really lovely cascading profession. But for me, it was also security, financial security, a feeling of, I guess prestige is the wrong word, but a feeling of accomplishment. I'd gone very far up in echelons of education in that I was able to access very interesting people in very interesting places all over the world, as well as help people who were less able to access that financially. And I gave it all up to go and hike in the wilderness for 6 months with no job on the other side of that. And that was truly terrifying. And it took me quite a long time to come to terms with that. Even when I started my journey, there was a voice at the back of my head going, is this irresponsible? This is irresponsible. Will I get a job when I get back? And that not knowing, that jump into, the leap and the net will appear. Well, my goodness, golly, it did appear, but it was very hard. It was hard letting go of my students, which I had trimmed down at that time. I wasn't working in mainstream education at that point. I was director of academics in Hong Kong, and I'd come back from Hong Kong, taken on a one-to-one student in London who I was very, very fond of, and he was just coming to the end of his GCSE. So it was a natural point, and I was being approached by other clients about work, and I was saying gently, no, can you give me a minute? No, I'm not sure what's happening next. Ooh, hedging bets everywhere. And then I thought, you know what? Life is short. And actually, very, very tragically, not long before that, a very dear friend of mine, Kinsey, had taken his own life very unexpectedly for all of us who adored him. A great character, big outdoorsy fella, who was in the RAF, always doing cool stuff. And there was a wake-up moment, which is, I can stay as part of this trajectory, my teaching trajectory. But what is my life for? Is there more? Is there something about myself that I haven't yet explored? Plus, I nearly lost this body. I nearly lost my life. I've been debilitated physically in terms of accessing the world for a very long time. I have not lived the life that I had maybe envisaged in terms of I didn't have children, didn't have solid relationships that lasted a long, long time because my pain would always step in the middle and stop these things happening. And then I thought, well, I've got my body back to 90% quality. And why am I not using it and exploring to see what it can do? So those things kind of won in my head. And I thought, you know what? If I'm such a good teacher, if I make such a difference, that is the reason I'm holding on to this career, if I really do work well with young people, that won't change from me taking a year out, 2 years out. All that will do is broaden my portfolio of skills, increase my resilience, be able to give even more back into that pot of education of adults or young people when I return, talking about managing change, talking about dealing with uncertainty. So I'm bloody well going to do it. So I did it. And it was still scary. And that's the thing that I talk about a lot as well, which is like, feel the fear and do it anyway is so true, even if it's a hackneyed phrase. You don't have to wait to stop being afraid to do something, whether it's camping by yourself overnight. You could do that and feel afraid all night long and not sleep a wink because you think monsters are going to get you. But you still did it. So I did it even though I was afraid. And for me, that was a humongous switch. Also because I've always been kind of an academic good girl. I've not always been a good girl, but I've always been like diligent, hardworking. Don't call in sick unless you really desperately have to. Don't muck about with other people's trust in you, professionally or socially or in any relational experience. You follow through. You do what you say. You're a person of your word. So to suddenly go, I can't tutor you next year. I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to show up for this, that, and the other because I'm going to go to the woods with a backpack, with everything I need in it for 6 months, felt wild, but it was wild in the best way.
I love it. And so do you feel that making that switch came at the right point in your life for you? And what's been your main takeaway from having the bravery to do it?
Yeah, I think it did come at the right point. I mean, everything happens when it should happen, I think. Retrospectively, you can always think I should have left earlier or I should have done this sooner. But you did it when you could. Everyone's doing what they can with what they've got when they can. And so it came at the right time. And the one takeaway, did you say, that I'd got from making that is that you're much more capable, resilient, and I don't know. You're much more capable and resilient than you might believe you are. You have much more in you than you might have already seen. It's like you are an incredible menu and you've only been to the restaurant twice and tried 2 starters, 1 main and the same dessert you always have. Forget that. Explore the whole menu, because if those courses were good, it's likely that the whole damn menu is delicious. So try the menu of yourself and take yourself out in the world and see what it's like.
Brilliant analogy. And what would you say has been the highlight of your journey following this change?
the amount of people I have been able to reach. My goodness. So I wrote the book. I went on my Instagram and started sharing my story. And now I have, it's a humble but big, in a way, following of maybe 25,000 people on Instagram, which feels, you look at the huge influencers. That's never what I've aspired to be. But to think that I can communicate with at least a fraction of those people, to let them know that they're capable, doesn't matter what they're going through. There's possibility on the other side of that. Hope prevails, You need to keep taking baby, tiny steps. If you can't focus on this week, focus on today. If you can't look to the end of the day, look at the next hour. And then if you can't look at the next hour, look around you. Find 3 things that ground you, that bring joy. A flower, the sun peeking through the window, your next breath. There is always something coming along the line that will be good. There is always a next breath, a next step that you can take. So the ability I can communicate that with more people brings me huge joy, working and speaking to big crowds, but also that I wrote a book and now 2 that are out in the world blows my mind.
It's a brilliant achievement. Do you feel like there are any future switches coming in your life, or do you feel like you've reached a really good equilibrium with the journey so far?
I don't know what equilibrium means. There is, yes, I know. But there's for me, in my brain, balance for me is feeling some momentum. So I think it might be a little bit to do with my neurochemistry, my neurospiciness. But there's also this feeling for me that momentum, no matter how slow, is balance, which they're almost opposites. It's a bit of an oxymoron, but I definitely think there are switches. But I do need to ground myself a bit more. So I'm in Cornwall for a little while now. Haven't got any big adventures planned. Just to hike around Cornwall to raise money for Copperfield, which is my friend's breast cancer charity. More books for sure. But I think there'll be a switch, hopefully, into maybe some television, some documentary stuff. That would be a really big dream of mine. I'm currently trying to source a really lovely agent for that. And I think that my message of hope and inspiration could go further. And I'd like to be speaking to even bigger audiences. I've spoken in the US, the UK, but I see positive change happen when I help people see themselves the way I see them. And the more people that can believe in themselves, the better world that we can have, I think.
Well, I'm excited about your switch into TV and documentaries. Let's make that happen.
Yes, please.
So in your book, Do Hope, you mentioned that there are 3 musketeers: resilience, perseverance, and self-worth. Talk us through those and your physical experience that made them so clear to you while you were on your adventures.
Well, I think that they are the 3 musketeers that go alongside hope, because they work together. So resilience, obviously you need resilience to be able to keep going in the face of knockbacks. And I think that the idea that we have often of resilience is this kind of alpha, push through, grit until something breaks, that kind of, sorry, that was an American accent. It's not necessarily only Americans that do that. It's kind of counterintuitive, because resilience is about knowing when to stop, breathe, rest, so that you can go again. It's resilience of the ego, I often say, is more important than resilience of the body, because I've been someone that had a body that didn't have much physical resilience, but my goodness, my spirit and my ego were resilient enough to carry on. Ego in a positive way, it's okay to fail and get back up again. You don't have to be ashamed. So resilience was always important to me. And perseverance is something from my journey that's not just the journey of hiking long distances, but the journey of the no's that you get, the no, we don't have an answer. And I don't mean no, I don't want to publish your book. Luckily, that didn't happen. But no, there's no answer for you. No, we can't solve your pain. No. And when you hear no from medical professionals that you've looked up to your whole life, it's understandable that you take that as a complete no. That's just a definitive no. But with perseverance, you're like, well, that might be a no, but let's see if we can explore this avenue, and then we'll try again down this avenue. So they're very closely related, perseverance and resilience, because you've got to have the resilience to get back up, to implement the perseverance of going forward again and trying something else. And self-worth is that kind of inalienable belief that it doesn't matter whether you are laid up in a bed, unable to move very much, you have chronic fatigue, or you have ME, or you have whatever it is, you have fibromyalgia, depression. It's that those things don't delete or alter your inherent self-worth. You are still worthy. You are still lovable. You are still worth time, effort, attention, space in this world. Self-esteem is slightly different. That's like, my self-esteem is good because I got this job, or because I look good in this outfit, or because this guy likes me, or this girl likes me. That's a different thing. That's a bit more externally validated. But self-worth is what will take you through to the next day till the sun comes up again. It's that I'm worth hanging on for, and I'm worth trying to find another way for which I'll use my perseverance and my resilience.
I love that. And there was a story in one of your books around just having progress each day, physically moving, whether it be 2 miles or 15 miles.
Yes.
And if you decided not to have that perseverance and just sit there still, tell us what might have happened to you.
Well, when you're deep in the woods and it's going to be a good few days before you get out to a little dusty road where you might walk along and find another road to hitchhike into a tiny dusty village, when you're that far in the woods, you often, and it rains for days on end, and all of your kit is wet, and you're running out of any food you want to eat, and you've only got porridge oats left, and they're now enough to make you want to chunder. You want to give up, and it's natural. You think, I'm not going any further, and you almost regress to some toddler-esque mindset, which is, I'm just going to sit here, I'm not going anywhere, because I hate it, and I want to go home. Totally valid to feel that way. Blistered feet and bruises and covered in mud and rain. But if you sit there, as I mentioned in the book, that's great. You can sit there and it will feel like you're doing what you want, and that's great and valid. But actually, people will walk past you and you'll have conversations, and that will feel nice too. And you'll have a chit chat with John, Bob, Barbara, whoever comes by. So you'll feel like you're part of something. You'll feel like you are engaged and involved, but they walk forward and they go on beyond you. And in the end, when the dust comes down at the end of another night, you're still in exactly the same place. You're just a bit colder, a bit stiffer of the body. You have a little bit less food. You have a little bit less water. And you suddenly begin to realize that just staying still in a huff, or just staying still because you think that's your only option, doesn't do anything for you. It will look like you're part of the world, but actually you're not. You are, you're stuck. There's no shame in being stuck, but everyone has to come to their own realization that actually, if you just got up and walked 10 meters and sat down on another rock and had a huff, well, that's great. That's massive progress. Then you can maybe walk a mile and have another huff. And each day or hour that you do that and huff as much as you want to, in whatever that might mean metaphorically, you're still making progress. And people will still pass you. You don't either have to be at the front or stopped at the back. You can be somewhere in the middle, but as long as you're making progress, you can feel good about yourself.
I loved that. When I read that, I was like, yeah, this is brilliant. It's such a good example, a physical example of something that we just think about often.
Yeah.
So another question I have for you is the difference between, or the link between, that resilience, perseverance, self-worth, which keep us moving forwards, and then knowing when to quit.
Resilience actually and knowing when to quit also go hands in hand, because you need to have great resilience or knowledge of your own resilience to be able to say, and enough now, I'm going to stop. Because people who don't believe that they could carry on again are the ones that won't stop and that then break. Because they think, can't stop. What will people think of me? What will I think of myself? What will happen to all the opportunities I can have right here? Push, burnout. And actually, resilience is going, okay, I'm taking stock of, am I making good decisions or am I too tired? Am I making rash decisions because I feel slightly panicked and I'm wondering what people are thinking of me, so I'm probably not making the right decisions right now? Am I handing in subpar work because I'm burning out? Yes, so I need to stop, and I need to know that that will be respected, because I respect myself enough to stop, to realise I am putting things out in the world or for myself that are subpar, and I can do something about that. So it's being able to have good self-confidence, innate knowledge that there will be other opportunities, that the tide will come back in again. The seasons of life and nature show us so starkly that tree branches that get ripped down get mended with beautiful patterns of scars on trees, you know. The mud turns to spring shoots and crocuses and daffodils every single year. Good things will come again. So knowing when to quit goes hand in hand with the resilience of knowing that the spring will come again. It's not the end of the world if I stop, say no, or sit this one out. That's just fine.
Brilliant. And I love the analogy of the seasons as well. It can come and it can go. So in the book, Do Hope, your book describes how others could see you. So that could be the students and their families, or your family, and namely your late father, could really see the worth and the light that you bring, but at times you couldn't. So should we all seek feedback from others, and should we be open to receiving it in order for it to make an impact on us?
That's a really interesting question. Yes, I think we do receive feedback from others, even if we're aware that we're processing it or not. And in fact, the links again, obviously, to self-worth. We are bombarded by what other people think of us constantly, whether it's in a look, a glance, whatever it might be, or direct feedback. So we have to know how to filter that, because if we are only believing who we are based on the reflection we see of ourselves that is coming back from others, that's a dangerous place to be. So knowing yourself first is really important. You can change, you can shift and shape, but having an honest dialogue with yourself, even if you're looking in a mirror and don't like some of the stuff you see, that puts you on really firm footing to be able to open the door and seek feedback from other people, which you're going to get whether you like it or not anyway, really. But once you know your inherent self-worth, your values and your flaws, you've got to look at your own flaws, and you've got to be open to hearing those flaws. Then it's harder to unseat you from yourself when they are said to you, because you kind of already knew that anyway and you're working on it, and thank you. It's when we're blind to ourselves and we don't want to take into consideration those darker, less likable elements of ourselves that we are completely bowled over and in pain when somebody directly shows us that thing. No, I'm not like that. How could she say I was like that? I'm never like that. But yeah, probably you are sometimes, and that's why it's come your way. And it's come your way in an unsavory manner because maybe you didn't notice it in yourself first. So yes, seek feedback from others, but be careful who you ask direct feedback from. Protect yourself. Other people's pain and struggle often comes out in how they treat you. And when people treat you poorly, it's very, very, very much more a reflection of how they feel about themselves and what they're going through than what they really believe you to be. So take things with a pinch of salt, seek counsel wisely. But if the universe consistently points something at you that you don't want to look at, but it keeps coming back again in a different overcoat, potentially that's something you need to sit down and consider opening the door to and having a frank conversation with.
I love that. And so you also mentioned a couple of times inner voice, self-worth, and you refer to that inner voice as potentially sometimes the shitty committee.
Yeah, they've always got something to say.
It can often be more negative than positive, that inner voice. So how can people start to have a much more positive, friendly, kind inner voice?
It can be hard because the shitty committee are there to keep you safe, but often they've been at the wine and they're a bit loud and shouty. So you just have to remember that the shitty committees, their intention is good. It's to keep you safe, but they go overboard. So in order to balance them out, it's often a really good and not narcissistic thing to note the things that you are good at and that you do like about yourself. We hear so much about narcissism, so arrogance and this and that these days. There's nothing wrong with knowing that you have good qualities and that you are a good person with good things to put into the world. We need more of those people who are aware of their goodness and their strength and are using it for good ends. So to battle the shitty committee, affirmations, write down in your journal, write in your work diary if you think journaling and affirmations are absolute bunk. Just write down in your work diary, at the top of the diary every day, or have a note in your diary. I'm kind. I'm a good egg. I helped 3 people today and I didn't want anyone to know. I'm not telling anyone. I helped that person with her bag get on the tube. I helped this person do this. Put good into the world and then begin to remember how you put good in the world, and then you'll see more good happening in the world, because where you focus is what you see. But you see more of what you focus on. So eventually the shitty committee will fade into the background noise, but always have them slightly bit of volume up on the shitty committee because they have got wisdom to share.
They can guide you sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, you're no stranger to educating and motivating people and really catalysing them to make positive change for the better. However, what do you feel are the most common hurdles that you find people who are lacking in motivation and maybe living with some adversity?
Firstly, I think that people doubt themselves before they even begin. So they haven't taken even a foot towards the edge, let alone the leap, because they have voices in their head, which are either, bullies from school, parents who are doing their best, but actually didn't give great messaging, teachers that were thoughtless and busy and tired or just unkind and said wrong things. So those voices are loud. They're all on the committee. And people often come to me to my retreats here in Cornwall, or, they come to me online for coaching. And what they say is, I don't even know how. It's not me. So the first step is to ask yourself, frankly, what it is you want from life, or what it is that brings you some kind of sparkle, some tickle in your tummy, where it is that what you do when you're not having to work that other people tell you to do. What is it that you do in your life that you go to that brings you joy? When you're at work and you're daydreaming about doing stuff, what kind of stuff is it you really daydream about? Because within those things is the nugget of what brings you great joy. And then you need to bring that harness it and pull it down into the forefront of your life and build a life around that. I think that also people can be frightened of real, genuine, concrete stuff like, how will I pay the bills? I'm worried about my mom, my elderly father. I'm worried about my husband who's suffering from depression, whatever it might be. There are other focuses in people's lives that stop them from taking leaps forward or making switches, to which I'd say, absolutely, I see you. Those are real things. But it doesn't stop you doing micro leaps, which is educating yourself, watching YouTubes, learning, keeping a little book where you write your new learnings. You help plan your direction. They might be micro leaps now, but they are turning into massive platforms for you to macro leap off later. It's never too late to start right now. What's that other famous quote? I'm probably going to assign it to someone completely wrong. The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. It's never too late to start. So it's finding concrete, empirically verifiable, lookable, you can look at progress, not esoteric. Progress that you can note in a book and say, today I learned on a 10-minute YouTube channel whilst I was waiting for my granddad's kettle to boil and medicine to be sorted. I watched a YouTube clip and I learned 1, 2, 3 things. And tomorrow I'm going to learn 1, 2, 3 new things. And by the end of 6 months, I'm going to be superbly confident in this new subject. And then I'm going to do a macro leap.
Brilliant. Now, you've mentioned that you run retreats in Cornwall, and you yourself, when you made your change, took yourself away from your current environment, away to be in the wilderness. So in your view, do you feel that the main way people can achieve positive change, is it mostly mindset, or do they also require a change in circumstance or surroundings? Do they need both?
I think it's very dependent on people's means and what they can do physically and financially as well. But I think you can have a change of scene even if it's a different walk around the block in a place you don't normally go to. So you don't necessarily have to have the means to fly somewhere to do a retreat. But I do think that you need to marry both mindset and circumstance and environment, because the more you can take yourself away from entrenched patterns, the better you're able to think clearly and differently for a minute, and then port those new thinkings back into your old life. It's very hard to always have a completely fresh perspective when you're surrounded by exactly the same stuff, noise, people, jobs, obligations every single day. So whether it's a different route to work or a coffee shop that you've never been to before and that no one else knows you go to, but you like the vibe of, and that every time you want to think about your new leap or your switch or when you're going to take it, you only think about that really focus down in that particular coffee shop. And that's where you go. And it's a trigger. When I'm in this coffee shop, this is where my inspiration is safe to flow about this topic I haven't told anybody about yet. When you leave the coffee shop, that's your safe space. It's in there. No one else knows about it, but it's happening. It's cooking in that building. And that can give you a sense of, even if it's in the same town or village, it's a real sense of departure through the looking glass, or up the top of the faraway tree. When you go through the hatch, that's your magical land where you're planning the switch. And then you go back into your daily life and all the grind. So there's different ways of doing both things, but I think they do go together, mindset and environment.
Such good advice. Really good advice for anybody listening, considering making a career change. Just, make those small steps towards, and keep a track, it sounds like to me, that you really monitor what you're learning, monitor what you're thinking. And it sounds really positive. So paint us a picture, Gail, of what success looks like for you.
For me, success looks different to a lot of people. I think in our society, we're often told to look at success as something material. So whether it's a really nice new car that shows you've had a promotion and a pay rise, or a bigger house, and there's nothing wrong with those things at all. But for me, they don't bring me the same satisfaction as the success of knowing that I am utilizing talents and skills that I have for the betterment of myself and others. I'm not trying to sound like I'm holier than thou. It's not anything that's better than a nice new car. But for me, that's what brings me satisfaction. So I feel successful when I've stood in front of, whether it's 3 people in a room or one-to-one session or a room of 3,000 delegates, and I have taken them from one place when they arrived, and by the time I finish working with them, giving a talk, speaking, running workshops, the atmosphere, the kinetic energy in the air around, the electricity in the air has changed. People's voices are different. The cacophony of people talking about possibility and oh my goodness, and I didn't think about it like that. And the way their bodies change as they walk out of the room, chatting to each other about whatever it might be. To see that transformation and to know that I have been integral in it, and I've helped to be the mirror that reflects people's potential back to them so they can see it more clearly. For me, oh heck yeah, that feels like really tangible success.
Oh, that is amazing. You're giving me goosebumps listening to you. And so finally, when it comes to mapping out a path forwards, what would be your advice for listeners who are looking to make a switch of their own, but they really don't know where to start? So
I think we'll go back to a couple of the things I mentioned, but also add a few more. So firstly, figure out what it is that you really want to do. And in the book are a few tips about how to do that. Just notice the things that bring you joy and try to move in that direction. Acknowledge that there are going to be pitfalls and fears and it might not work, and be okay with that. Be okay with that. It might fail in the beginning and it might look like failure, but actually it's not. Thirdly, if it feels too scary to make a big switch, then have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. You don't have to have all or nothing. You know, hope works best when it's part of a spider web or a network of potential options, because then you feel more secure knowing that should one thread snap or break or be taken from you, there's still another network way through to your end goal. So make sure, okay, if I do that leap and it fails, have I got a plan B? Is there a job I could take? Have I got somebody lined up? Have I got some extra work at the pub? Could I go and take on a master's degree? Could I, whatever it might be, could I do an internship? Have options for yourself, and then it makes the big leap much less scary, and therefore makes it much more likely that you won't need plan B, C, D, and E, because you'll feel much more confident about putting your full self into big leap plan A.
Tell me a bit more about your retreats and coaching business.
So I hold retreats down here in Cornwall, currently 2 different kinds of retreats. We have adventure and resilience and self-worth for women, and we do a lot of cold water swimming and hike prep packing and walking, guided history walks and stuff in Cornwall, which is delightful. And my other one is on a private estate with 2 private beaches and lots of ancient woodland, where we look at creativity, writing and resilience in a retreat. And that's fantastic. And I also do coaching, group coaching a little bit, but mostly one-on-one in terms of resilience, life coaching and wellness, getting people where they need to be, helping people get unstuck. And that is thriving and fabulous, and I love it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you for coming on the show, sharing your amazing knowledge with our listeners. Before you go, how can people find you?
Well, it's been wonderful chatting to you. Thank you for your brilliant questions and the chance to talk. They can find me, you can find me, lovely people listening, at gailmuller.com. That's my website, GAIL Muller.com. And I'm also on all good booksellers, Waterstones, Amazon, and also the Do Book Company for my memoir, Unlost, about the Appalachian Trail and my journey with chronic pain, and my most recent book, Do Hope, which is a testament to thriving in challenging times and gives you lots of tools to improve. And of course, Instagram and LinkedIn at the Gail Muller.
Fantastic. And I can highly recommend your book. So please do get those books for anybody who's potentially going through something and they just need a bit of inspiration. So Gail, thank you for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gee.
I just finished recording a wonderful episode of The Switch with Gail Muller. If you like what you heard, please follow us along on Spotify and give us a 5-star rating.